The festive season is supposed to be a time of compassion and festivity. There's no question that money comes into the equation for relationships. Despite the popular cliche that women are the big spenders in December, a recent report from Compuscan suggests that men have quite a lot to answer for. And joining us to discuss this further, I've got Craig Gradidge, who's head of investments in studio with us today. And then, of course, joining us from our studios in Cape Town is Tina Butner, who's a PR specialist at Compuscan as well. Welcome to you both, and thanks so much for joining us. Perhaps let's start off with Tina over on that end. Compuscan running the survey, just looking at the spending patterns between males and females specifically, and just how exposed to credit they are. Run us through the latest trends.
Basically, over the past 2 years, we've looked at the spending habits of both men and women, particularly over the Christmas season. And what we've seen is that there's a higher number of missed payments on the half of women, particularly over December and January. So although they are both spending, women seem to be missing the payments during this time.
And I thought it was quite interesting that actually if you look over the different age groups, that there seems to be a distinct trend where as women age, they're actually less likely to make those payments, and the payment gaps that we're seeing between men and women actually broaden in the older age groups.
Yeah, that is actually very interesting. When we look at the younger age groups, particularly the under 30-year-olds, we're seeing that men and women are performing very similarly. So although they're both struggling to repay their debt over the December vacation or festive period, they are performing very, very similar to each other. And as we look at the older age groups, what we're seeing is that that gap still starts to widen. And so men are actually performing much better in the older age groups than women are.
Craig, is coming to conclusions of a survey like this, I mean, is it too simplistic to come to the conclusion that this shows that as women age, it becomes harder for them to manage their financial situations?
Yeah, look, I'm not familiar with the research methodology and how they arrive at their conclusions, but our experience as a financial planning organization, we found, I mean, we have over 400 clients, and the majority of our clients are female. And that wasn't by design. It's just that we found our female clients tend to be a lot more responsive and a lot more open to the requirements of financial planning. It's not as if we undertook any kind of major effort to attract female clients. It's just happened that way.
Do you think it's a trend that's actually changing though? I mean, I think that, you know, women, I mean, you look at the US, women are actually, there are more women employed in financial services, for instance, than there are men as of the start of 2012. Do you think it's just a changing face of the workforce that contributes to that? Yeah,
there are a number of kind of demographic changes at play. The fact that, as you pointed out, there are more women employed now than there have ever been in the past, and in fact there are more women than men being employed. If you look at the average age at which women get married, that's pushed out quite significantly. People are having children later in life, putting their careers, the opportunities have opened up, and that has created quite a significant shift from a financial planning perspective as well, in that you have women making more financial decisions nowadays as well and carrying more of the burden. So yeah, I think some of these demographic changes will take a bit of time to play out, but from our experience we're seeing evidence of it already.
And I think also one of the things we're seeing is that women are having to head up households. There's a lot of single women households, and you know that means that they're financially burdened, and also that's very often they have to leave the work environment to look after kids and their parents. Women tend to be the primary caregivers. Now, what I think is missing in the industry is actually a knowledge of, you know, specific products that can maybe be geared and tailored a little bit differently to actually cater towards women who need to leave the work environment. You know, stuff like where their payment perhaps to pension funds stops, and then they have to rejoin a fund. They've lost that potential in interest growth. Are you seeing any product development catering specifically to women?
Yeah, look, I think the financial objectives of men and women are the same. I think there's a certain peculiarities. Like you say, women bear children. So they're out of work. If you have 2 kids, you're out of work for a full year. So that interrupts your financial planning and your retirement planning especially. Women in the workplace generally more susceptible to kind of dread diseases because the higher testosterone levels and all the research that you find around that. So the specific products tailored towards women, you can find in existing products the right solutions that you need, more flexible type solutions. But in our experience, there hasn't really been a need for specific products tailored at women. I think the plan needs to be tailored towards females as opposed to having particular products in there.
Yeah. Tina, of course, Compuscan running through with this kind of survey, with what end goal in mind? Is it just a matter of highlighting these kind of trends that emerge?
I think it is about consumer education. If we're trying to improve the current credit debt spiral that consumers are finding themselves in, we need to know where the problems lie. So we've identified that individuals under the age of 30 are experiencing a lot of financial strain, which I think it's a presumed scenario. These are our young workforce. They're coming into their first jobs. They're experiencing credit for the first time and are not always able to manage that. So along with women, we're also looking at the younger individual and trying to educate them on how to better deal with their finances, how to make their repayments, and what is the importance of a good, healthy credit report.
Yeah. Do you see this, Craig, influencing banks and how they lend and who they lend to?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't seen any statistics of late around that breakdown, but the fact that more women are coming into the workplace means that more of them qualify for credit. Our experience is that the females or our female clients generally are a lot more I wouldn't say conservative, but a lot more responsible with their money. And that probably is, perhaps it's because we're a financial planning organization. We're not going to have someone that's in debt coming to see us. So perhaps it's that reason. But even though, if we look at the behavior of our female clients relative to the behavior of our male clients, you find that they're a lot more responsive to things like risk planning. Which is not exciting because the men want investments. That's where all the excitement is. But the nature of risk is such that it can happen at any point, and the people that stand to lose out most times is the children. And so you find then that your female clients relative to your male clients, you do see a distinct difference in behavior.
Tina, the latest Credit Bureau monitor shows that 47% of credit active consumers have impaired credit records. What sort of trends are you expecting over the Christmas season and the coming year for credit?
Well, what is very interesting is that over the past 2 quarters, we've seen that the number of impaired credit records has actually stabilized. So it's remained at 47%. So that hopefully is a good sign. Maybe it's a sign of things to come, that consumers are perhaps watching their spending and perhaps watching their repayments a bit better. But over the Christmas season, we do again expect an increased number of defaults on accounts. Over the past 2 years, we've consecutively seen an increased number of missed payments over the Christmas season. And I think we're likely to expect that again. It has been a very difficult year for a lot of consumers, and I think a lot of people are feeling the financial pressure.
Tina, one of the questions I've got from my side, often salaries are paid very early in December. I mean, for a lot of companies, they're paid on or around the 14th or 15th. I mean, a lot of South Africans literally cannot plan 2 weeks in advance. I mean, what's the damage of paying your salary so early, and then also, you ask the question why they end up missing the payments, by the 5th or 7th of the following month?
Yeah, I do think that is one of the biggest problems at the moment, is that individuals are budgeting for December, but they're not budgeting for January. So in January, you've got school fees, you've got school uniforms, textbooks, and none of that is taken into consideration. So what we are trying to encourage is that the minute you get your paycheck in December or your Christmas bonus, that you don't just budget for Christmas, that you budget for January, because it is a very big gap. And I think that is what is having a significant impact on consumers and how they're paying their debt. Particularly in January, I think that the higher number of credit or payments that are missed are seen in January.
And are you seeing any differences in the ways that credit consumers are treating their unsecured credit versus credit such as car repayments, etc.?
Most definitely. We've seen actually a very big difference there. Recently, we've noticed that individuals who are missing their unsecured debt, so they're missing their store cards and they're missing their credit card payments, are still paying their mortgages. In fact, about 70% of individuals who have missed an account or a credit card or a store card are still paying their home loans. And about 66% are still paying their vehicle finance. So I think individuals are realizing, well, if I miss my car payment, my car will be repossessed. If I miss my mortgage, I could lose my home. And the consequences thereof are a bit more vast than I didn't pay my store card. So people are starting to weigh up the consequences, and that is a very it's a very scary spiral actually, because what's happening is that they're using their unsecured credit to fund their secured credit. So they're in fact living off credit in order to pay their home loans.
I've got a question for Craig. I mean, something you just said earlier that, when you're a financial planning organisation, so people who are in debt don't, typically come to you. But, it's kind of counterintuitive if you think about it. I mean, the reason you're trying to, yes, I understand that people take on debt and that they're in that position because they haven't planned for it. But I mean, surely the idea of going to a financial planner when you've got real problems is saying, well, I've actually got a problem, I need a plan to get me out of this and to basically make sure that I retire comfortably.
Yeah, the proportion of people that come to us with that situation is a lot smaller than the proportion of people that come to us that are generally more responsible with their finances. So it's not to say that our clients are debt-free. I think it's responsible with the amount of debt. Their balance sheets can accommodate the kind of debt that they have. And we would certainly work with them in terms of bringing about efficiency in terms of the amount of debt they've got, and making sure they understand the implications and the kind of stresses that could be put on their balance sheet if interest rates were to suddenly go up. We have the lowest interest rates in 4 decades at the moment, so it's disappointing to hear those stats, because if interest rates were to increase 2-3%, things will get a lot worse very quickly.
And I think that's incredibly important. I think that we seem to have taken on this debt, and we kind of tell ourselves we're paying a little bit of it down, but we can't really justify the difference in 1 or 2%, and it kind of changes the picture quite drastically in terms of increases.
Yeah, people need to understand the different kinds of debt. Debt where you purchasing assets is good debt, because over time that increases the strength of your balance sheet, your personal balance sheet. Debt that funds consumption is the kind of debt that gets you into trouble, because at the end of it you're sitting with the debt and you've got nothing to show for that debt.
Do you think consumers in South Africa are using this low interest rate environment a little bit more smartly, possibly, and to their favor in terms of getting rid of the irresponsible debt, if we can call it that?
Well, the statistics suggest not, because you've seen a massive increase in unsecured lending in the last 2 years. So, and if you look at, 2-3 years ago, the number of credit active consumers with impaired credit records was about 48-49%, which is extremely high. I think 18 million credit active consumers and 8 million at least 3 months behind on payments. And it's only at 47% now, and we've had low interest rates for over a year.
And there hasn't been a change in the material change in the savings levels in South Africa. I mean, we're still a net, we're zero.
Yeah, savings levels have deteriorated as well. There have been other factors, electricity prices, petrol prices. So there have been other pressures borne to bear on consumers. But largely they've missed the opportunity, or they seem to be missing the opportunity of low interest rates to pay down that irresponsible debt that you spoke of.